This is India, today the fifth largest economy in the world and the most populated country on earth. Its powerful workforce has become one of the main reasons why India is growing so fast on the global stage. While many other nations are getting older and their people skill no longer match modern jobs, India still has a very young and energetic population. This gives a huge advantage and allows the country to use global challenges as new chances for progress. In the last few years, India has often appeared in the news for attracting many manufacturing jobs that once went to China almost automatically. As China's fast-growing period seems to be slowing down, some believe that it is now India's time to become the next factory of the world and enjoy the same wealth China once did. This dream fits perfectly with the government's plan to build a 5 trillion economy by the 2026, though there's still a long way to go. Right now, India produces only about one-sixth as much per person as China, and even China, after all its success, is still far from being a truly rich country, but both nations show how growth can bring real human benefits. China's economic rise lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty and a huge positive change that India could also repeat. So, could India become the next superpower to stand beside China and the United States? What strength can it use to reach that level, and what obstacles might stop it? India's current path started in the early 1990s, around the same time as China's. Before that, India's economy was a strange mix of a Soviet-style planned system and leftover free market ideas from British rule. When the Soviet Union collapsed, India's biggest trading partner at the same time, and domestic rules were poor, the country fell into a serious debt crisis. It nearly went bankrupt until the International Monetary Fund gave an emergency loan. When the IMF rescues an economy, it usually applies a plan known as a Washington Consensus. We have seen this idea in other countries too. Basically, it is a list of reforms meant to open a nation to trade and private businesses. For India, the biggest change was ending its protectionist rules, high taxes, import limits, and maze of businesses license that made life difficult for companies. Protectionism sounds helpful because it protects local industries from foreign competition. For example, if India wanted to defend its car makers, it could tax imported cars to make them more expensive. People would then prefer cheaper domestic cars, keeping local factories busy and workers employed. That seems good in theory, but there are two big problems. First, consumers pay more for everything. Imported goods cost more, and even local companies can raise prices because competition is limited. Second, producers who rely on imported parts must pay extra too, which raises cost again. In today's global economy, no country can make everything it needs alone. From car engines to microchips, almost every product depends on international supply chains. Import taxes make the system less efficient and raise prices across the board. If a company has to pay high import taxes for all the parts it needs to build its products, it must also raise prices for customers. Sometimes this trade-off makes sense. A country may accept higher prices in exchange for more jobs or greater independence, but this also makes local products less competitive internationally, leading to higher inflation at home. We can see this same effect today in extreme cases like the Russia sanctions or the US-China trade war. Economies can survive higher prices for a while, but not forever. If cheap prices were the only sign of success, then very poor countries would be the richest in the world. What truly hurts economies is when inflated prices make their export less attractive abroad. Imagine a car company that can only sell its cars at home because foreign cars are too expensive to import. Such a company will struggle to sell abroad, missing out on new markets and long-term jobs. That is the second major problem with protectionist policies. They hurt export competitiveness. Some governments try to avoid this by protecting their industries in another way. Instead of punishing imports, they subsidize local producers. They may offer tax cuts, direct payments, or guaranteed government purchases. The best known example is the United States, which gives heavy support to its farmers. The goal is to keep agriculture alive, protect jobs, and make sure the country can feed itself independently. This kind of protection is less obvious. It doesn't raise prices directly, but it still costs taxpayers money. Government lose income from import taxes and must instead spend on subsidies. Eventually, citizens pay anyway through higher taxes or inflation. No matter how it's done, protectionism interferes with free markets. Every time government do that, inefficiency appear. That is why most economies grow faster when they open up to trade. To be fair, India's main issue wasn't just protectionist trade rules, it was the huge amount of government control over all kinds of businesses activity. After independence, India looked to the Soviet Union for inspiration. It built a centrally planned economy guided by 5-year plans that targeted agriculture, industry, and other key sectors. Private businesses could still exist, but large trade owned companies dominated. Some regulations were reasonable. For example, only qualified doctors could open clinics, but India's system went far beyond that. Business owners needed dozens of license permissions and stamps just to start operating. A single company might have to deal with up to 80 different government offices. To stay open, they had to constantly satisfy all of them. All those heavy restrictions were removed more than 30 years ago, and that is when India's true potential started to show. Of course, simply removing rule isn't enough to grow an economy, but for India since 1991, and especially after 2000s, growth has been strong and consistent. The economy doubled in size every 5 years. Without the weight of old government barriers, India became a much easier place to do business for several reasons. First, India is the second largest English speaking nation in the world, with around 125 million speakers. That makes it extremely attractive for international companies because English is the main global language. Today, India is using its strength to move beyond cheap manufacturing. The country has learned from China's story not to depend only on factories, but to build a smarter and more balanced economy. One of India's biggest assets is its young and educated population. Every year, millions of students graduate with degrees in science, engineering, and technology. Because English is so common, Indian workers can easily work with international companies, unlike many of their Chinese competitors. This language bridge allows India to become a major player in global services, IT, and software. Many cities in India have turned into powerful technology hubs, often called the Silicon Valley of Asia. They produce software for global corporations, created apps, manage cloud systems, and handle customer services for the world's biggest companies. Instead of assembling gadgets, India are designing and programming them.